Good morning and welcome everyone to this morning's webinar with Andy Street, Mayor of the West Midlands. We're extremely grateful to the Mayor for joining us for this special occasion, particularly given how hectic your diary is, Andy, and there's the small matter of an election just around the corner as well. Today's session is the first of events for our members of our Reimagining the Region regional networking group, which is Reimagining the Region. Launched in January of this year, we're absolutely delighted to have welcomed so many members to the group and look forward to hopefully welcoming some other members who are present on this call today. So I'd like to welcome the Aspen Initiative UK, Benfield Homes, Birmingham Energy Initiative, Bradford Estates, Breakthrough Coaching and Consulting, Chris Windley, CJD Consulting, Coventry Bid, Coventry Citizens Advice, Eastern Holding, Fusion Media Services, Luck Hospitalities, Maving Limited, Shortland Horn, SSE in the Midlands, Shaw Creative, the Web Orchard Limited, and Carol Donnelly Consultancy. I'm delighted that we're welcoming new members to the group every week. And as I say, we'd be happy to welcome our guests as well to join the group. Without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Andy Street, Mayor of the West Midlands. I suspect you're all more than aware of Andy's profile across the region. So if you're in agreement, Andy, I think it'd be great if we crack on with the Q&A and I'll start firing you questions left, right and centre, if that's okay.
Yes, of course, Chris. If people don't know a bit about my background now, they never will. So yes, of course. And just to say, though, it's lovely to hear the new members being called out and lots of familiar names, as I think someone just flashed across the screen. So great to hear that growing momentum behind your organisation, Chris. But yeah, let's get on with it. Yeah.
Fantastic. So it goes without saying that please, we're going to ask people to ask questions to you directly rather than me read them all out. So when it's your question time, please make sure you unmute. But let's get on with the first question. So if you bear with me, we're going to call Will Stirrup, co-CEO of Maving, to the stage. Is Will with us this morning? Bear with me.
Can't hear me.
There we go. Fantastic.
Can hear me?
And we're off.
So, great.
Yeah, that's great, Will.
Hi there. Thanks a lot for, Chris, first of all, thanks a lot for organising this. It feels not that long ago that we were sharing an office together. So very excited to see how it's all grown and see this momentum. Andy, just a quick question from me, really. So we're a electric mobility startup in the two-wheel space, and we're just sort of wondering at a very high level. The UK government has set a fairly ambitious target to move to 100% electric vehicle sales by 2030. And I'm just wondering if the West Midlands Combined Authority, or how the West Midlands Combined Authority is planning on helping accelerate that transition to electric vehicles, if there are any sort of regional specific policies in place or in the pipeline that are going to sort of push that change across.
Yes, great question. To be really precise, and it's worth us just getting this right, 2035 is the end of petrol and diesel, but you're still allowed hybrids up to 2035. So it's not quite everything has to be pure electric by 2030. And that is quite important for the model programs in our big automotive manufacturers. Anyway, so I think there's probably two specific things for the West Midlands. And of course, this matters, you could say, more to us than anywhere else as the centre of the automotive industry. And the first thing, of course, is about this whole question of battery production. So we all know that the electric automotive industry is going to be based around battery. If we are not manufacturing batteries, it will definitely hold us back. And that is why specifically we have stood forward, first of all, to put funding on the table for the National Industrialisation Centre for Battery Manufacture, which is already open in Coventry. And it's a brilliant thing to go and see if you get the chance. And I was very pleased, one, we did the bid for it in 2017, but two, we also put 18 million of our own money on the table to win that for the West Midlands. But the next big story here is, of course, the Gigafactory. Because if we don't win that factory, then in a sense, it is going to dent the strength of our cluster here. So you know where we're up to there. We've now announced the chosen site. It's a collaboration between Coventry City Council, Warwick District Council as the planner, the landowner, and us as the sort of, what's the word, overall strategy owner. And we are making that case to government. And of course, one other thing I had to do was persuade government to put the cash on the table that will end up subsidising this. So there's a lot there. What we've now got to do, of course, is actually, I use the word seduce usually, an international battery manufacturer. And those conversations are going on with the DIT now, but absolutely critically important. The other aspect, of course, though, is trying to actually get trying to build the cluster around us. So what we've also been doing is trying to get inward investment into the region to strengthen this cluster. And we've seen some really good pieces of progress there. Obviously, LEVC expanding. We've seen Lotus bringing their research centre here, 200 jobs. And that was another West Midlands Growth Company inspired deal. And of course, just recently, we've seen Norton Motorbikes also announcing they will make electric bikes here to strengthen the cluster. And that too was a West Midlands Growth Company induced investment. So that's important. And then probably worth, not the main part of the answer, but just a little bit as well. We also have a role, of course, in encouraging the whole EV charging points, where frankly, the government are not making enough progress on, and we need to accelerate that. We have put a proposal together for what you call rapid charging at key intersection points, and we have not won the public funding for that yet, but we stand ready to be that sort of bridge between the public and the private for that as well. So actually, Maeve, there's quite a lot of stuff where we are active directly, and also as that sort of catalytic role.
Thank you ever so much for that question. Thank you. And now we're going to move over to Joe Elliott, MBE. Your question, Joe.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Joe.
I'm sitting here in the Rico Arena.
Jolly good.
Having had a meeting early on, and I'd like to thank you for your help in bringing that deal together to bring Coventry City back after such a long time. So well done. You might guess my question is about HS2.
Yes.
I don't believe HS2 does Coventry any favours at all, and I question whether it will be a success. Over to you.
So, yeah, you've not changed your view on this, and neither have I.
No, I haven't, Andy.
And neither have I. So, as you know, I lobbied very hard to get the Prime Minister to give this the green light back in the winter, just over 12 months ago now. It was February 2020 we had the green light. And I still believe it's the right thing to have done. Let's be clear why. Because it creates a new spine of public transport in the country, which will get people out of the air, frankly. Getting that whole London-Manchester air route becoming obsolete, and of course, providing relief to our completely over-congested West Coast Main Line and local railways. And the West Midlands will be right at the heart of that network. Now, I know it doesn't serve Coventry with the first station, but Coventry is but 5 miles from Interchange Station, which will be the first stop outside London. And obviously then, particularly the connectivity to the north will be considerably improved. And for the Coventrians on the call, remember we continue to lobby for the maintenance of the direct Coventry-London 3 trains an hour service, which thus far has been protected. And that will need to be continued after the timetable with HS2 starts. But my personal view is that in 40 years' time, we will look back and say, why did we ever question this? Just as happens with most iconic infrastructure that we finally get round to committing to.
It's been 11 years of very troubled time for HS2. And I'm not going to labour this point. What I'm going to say to you, Andy, I'll actually forgive you for all your bouncing up and down about HS2 if you bring the Gigafactory to Baggington Airport. So there's a challenge for you.
Well, I think we will get the Gigafactory to get Baggington Airport. It's a brilliant site. They're in the middle of the cluster, as I've already said. But also, it's just a logical place to do this. And we all know that it's talked that Britain going to need about 7 gigafactories in time at maturity. And it would be unthinkable. But I'll say one of the first 2, because the government announcement of the funding was pretty unsubtle in its coding. It talked about batteries made in the West Midlands or the North East. So it's obvious which 2 sites they have in mind for the public funding. So I do think we will achieve it, actually, Chris. Joe, sorry.
Good luck.
Chris was putting his thoughts across the screen. Thank you.
And now delighted to welcome Kate Allgate, the CEO of Coventry Citizens Advice.
Oh, yes.
Good morning, Andy.
Hello.
Since the pandemic, we've seen a massive uplift in terms of demand for our services across the West Midlands.
Sure.
And the top 2 issues we see is around debt and welfare benefits. We see, obviously, the fundamental cause of both of these is access to secure employment and a living wage. How do you foresee your role within the region to help improve inclusive access to sustainable employment?
Yeah. So I think it's probably worth, in terms of answering Kate's question, because it's such a critical question, it's probably just worth giving the context of how we were doing, what's happened, and most importantly to Kate's question, what we're going to do. So in the run-up to the pandemic, I'm not going to be naive and say everything was solved. Of course it wasn't. We still had some enormous challenges for the region. But the truth is our employment rates were increasing pretty rapidly, actually. And we'd moved to a record employment rate of 75.2. And the frustrating thing is we were just 0.1% behind the national average. And I thought we were going to get there for the first time in decades. But obviously that has been pushed back. But it was huge progress. And actually Coventry and Warwickshire have been the best performing part of the region in that, actually. And we were actually seeing the sort of gap with the national averages close in a number of measures, and particularly in terms of our skills and training and development standards. So that was good. But just one more stat, because it tells the story. And in the 3 years to the end of 19, we'd increased the number of jobs in the West Midlands by 97,000. Really good progress. But the reason I call that number out is it looks as though we've lost 95,000 jobs in the pandemic. The number of claimants has gone up by 95,000. So that's the sort of scale of the step back. And in simple language, it loses all the progress we'd made in the previous 3 years. It's not quite true because, of course, there's different jobs lost than those that have been created in the period. So to answer your question head on, Kate, my job is to at least find that 100,000 and hopefully many more. So what we have produced is what I call my mayoral jobs plan, holding it up, Exhibit A, how we get the West Midlands back to work. And this is about not fantasy land. This is where is that 100,000 jobs coming from? What can we see now? What schemes are there? What investments are there that are going to deliver those new jobs? And there is a real emphasis in this paper on your word about inclusivity, because we know that it is young, female, and those from minority communities who have borne the brunt of this. So we have to find, for example, the new training opportunities for young people. I'm not going to go through it all, but it calls out some of the sectors that are still growing fast. So obviously digital is a big growth area. We've talked about the electrification of automotive. We've talked of construction is very important. It was the fastest growing area. It will come back, I think. But of course, we've also got to think about the retraining opportunities. So things like, and this is very important for those young unemployed people, our sector-based work academies working with our colleges, 10,000 vacancies there, unique to the West Midlands. It's all in that plan. It's all, Kate, if you want to see the detail of it, it's all available online. In the interest of brevity, I'm not going to go through every line of it, but we have literally gone through how we will get to that 100,000 new opportunities. Very important question. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. I'm delighted to welcome Alexander Newport, the Managing Director of Bradford Estates.
Thanks, Chris. Morning, Andy.
Good morning, Alex.
Good morning. As a neighbouring landowner to the West Midlands, I wondered how you felt that less densely populated neighbouring authorities might be able to help the WMCA to fulfil its strategic development needs and hit its net zero carbon targets.
Well, they already are. Actually, is the fairest answer. So I'll give you a very specific point. First of all, we've been talking about the gigafactory in Baggington. That is actually in Warwick District Council. and the collaboration with Warwick on that is, you know, very exciting. And similarly, I shouldn't have all the examples from Coventry and Warwickshire. Most of the questioners so far have come from that side of the region, though. But it's an obvious example of what you talk about, because obviously the provision of availability of land for big industrial use is really very difficult in the urban West Midlands. Another really good example at the other side of the conurbation is, of course, the collaboration between Wolverhampton and Staffordshire over the I-54 enterprise zone, and you know what that did first time round, and then the expansion again now. So it's hugely significant. The other way in which it's hugely significant is actually in our housing numbers. So we always say that we've achieved our housing target for the last couple of years, 17,000 homes a year, a good progress in the 7 authorities within the combined authority. But actually to get to 17,000, we need brilliant contributions from all the surrounding councils. And so they have stepped forward wonderfully. And we all know the way the region works with travel to work areas, that housing in Bromsgrove, Lichfield, Tamworth is absolutely critical for jobs which are in the conurbation. I always remember when we formed the LEP, a stat that stood out in my mind: 50% of the people in Lichfield and Tamworth actually who travelled for work travelled into either Birmingham or Solihull. I mean, it could not have been clearer. So the surrounding council areas have got a critical role to play in our overall picture. And that's why the duty to collaborate, the housing market area target numbers are the way we drive out that collaboration. Does that answer clearly?
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering about net zero carbon, because obviously, again, being densely populated, the West Midlands will need kind of neighbouring authorities to probably help out in terms of solar or other.
Well, there's two answers to that. Again, you go back to Gigafactory. That's all about net zero, isn't it? That's about moving away from the carbon engine. The other, let me just say a word about densification, though. And this sometimes makes me unpopular. We are going to need to increase the density of our housing in the conurbation. This might not seem a popular view, but we're actually, for a second economy of a European, let alone an Asian economy, incredibly, whatever the opposite of dense is, extensive. And we are going to need to densify. And where I do want to pay credit on this is the work of Birmingham City Council to densify their city centre. It's the right thing to do. And we are going to need to make more progress in some of our other boroughs. And actually, there's quite a tricky issue with Coventry City Council on this. They're finding it harder to make some of those changes than Birmingham planners have. And it is going to come to the Black Country as well. Because otherwise the alternative will be to your zero carbon, will be taking Greenbelt. And you know, I am utterly opposed to that around the conurbation, because that is anything but sustainable and contributing to net zero. So we are going to have to man up to this densification. It can be done well, it can be done in a very green way, but we are going to have to tackle it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you ever so much, Andy. And now over to Trish Willits, who's the bid director for Coventry Bid. Over to you, Trish.
Brilliant. I told you it's all Coventrians today.
Hello,
good morning, Trish.
Andy. Good morning.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this morning with you. As the bid that's sitting currently in the most amazing start of the UK City of Culture year, what we're trying to do now is to take this moment in time to grow up, to pull up our trousers and to become the first cultural bid in the country as we come to be a bid plus, making sure that we're working not only to support our amazing businesses in the city centre, but with a cultural angle. What's your thoughts on that, Andy? Is that something that you would advocate and support?
Well, I think it's brilliant, Trish. I hadn't heard about this till you told me personally, and then I read the notes for this. I do think it's brilliant. And the reason I say that, because colleagues on the line might say, oh, it's easy for him to say that. Let me explain why I think that's very important. If you think about the challenges to town and city centres, which people like Trish face every day, I am absolutely certain that culture's got a critical role to play in responding to these challenges. And if you think of the wonderful proposal from Shearer Developments for the massive redevelopment of Coventry City Centre, I mean, an incredibly ambitious programme. 98 million of the combined authorities money reserved for that, something I'm very proud of the fact that we've contributed to. Culture or performance-based plays a critical role in that. And I think it is so brilliant because it's moved away from retail of the anchor. Yes, of course, there'll be some retail, but there's a lot more housing, back to the previous debate about densifying in our city centres to protect the green fields around the conurbation. But actually that performance space is incredibly new thinking about what people will come to the city centre for. So actually, whether it's the Belgrade in Coventry or whether it's the Rep and Symphony Hall in Birmingham or the Grand in Wolverhampton, they have got a critical role to play in the reopening of our cities. So I'm absolutely all for it, Trish. I'd love to actually see a bit more about what it means in practice on the ground, but you're
absolutely
spot on in the right place, and you've got a brilliant opportunity to lead the country.
Thank
given
you.
the City of Culture billing. Yeah.
It's so lovely this moment in time, Andy, as you know, the In Paint We Trust project, which is the street art project with local Coventrians who are going to be doing that physical work, which is brilliant, and the show windows. I'm delighted that the bid has commissioned Charlie Levine, who is currently the creative director of ITV Creates. So we've got a real expert. She's from Dorridge, so she's one of us, one of our regional girls.
Really?
She's showcasing that. And this morning we've got several of our national brands signed up to the initiative. So Coventry will be leading the way. One of those brands is the Nationwide Building Society, and we'll be taking Coventry show windows, not only in Coventry, but up to Liverpool and Hull, who are our previous UK City of Cultures, again, to showcase our West Midlands to them, but a great way of working together. So yeah, we're delighted to be leading the way, and
brilliant.
Really appreciate your support, Andy.
Brilliant, Trish. And just one thing, I hope I'm allowed to say this. I think the Combined Authority has done exactly what I said it would do in my last election, support Coventry City of Culture all the way. So I hope that people won't think it's inappropriate saying that £31 million the Combined Authority has put into the physical regeneration of Coventry City Centre. So if you walk down between the old 60s precinct and see the new landscape, that's CA money that's done that. And I'm really pleased we've done it, because the whole point about City of Culture was it was to leave a legacy across the city, and that's been done. And obviously we're also funding a small amount, but of the actual revenue budget for the cultural programme as well. So I hope we've really manned up.
We're most grateful, Andy. We really are. Our businesses are so excited when the roadmap allows to open that they will actually almost be opening in a brand new city, which is just fabulous.
It is the right thing to have done.
Thank you,
Trish. Good luck to you. You've had a bit of luck with the roadmap allowing opening on the 17th and the City of Culture starting on the 15th of May. Somebody was smiling at us over that.
The stars were aligned, Andy. The stars were aligned.
Thank you, Trish. And now let me introduce you to Chris Windley, the CEO of Cybersecurity Valley UK.
Good morning, Andy. Hope you're well. Nice to see you. Nice to see you again. So, Andy, if you didn't know, I'm a massive HS2 fan, so just to say that. So I totally agree with you that it is completely iconic. On that point, I have behind me what I call the copper train. The copper train is from a mass transit test that was done in Vancouver, where it was shown that 99.9% of COVID is killed within 1 hour by using copper. And I'm just emphasizing that because my question really to you, Andy, is just really about confidence in terms of getting people back into offices, but getting them back in a COVID safe and cyber safe way, right? And obviously we have the HSE standards, but do you think, Andy, that we could benefit from going beyond that, right, by raising those standards to give people more confidence to come back to the offices and work?
Fascinating question. I'm not sure. And you, to be very honest, you may know more than I do about this, Chris. I'm not sure that actually the decisions about coming back to the office in people's minds will be made by detailed changes to the HSE standard. I think it's actually going to be much more about what you might call mass public views, which will revolve around other things. First of all, does the vaccination programme continue to succeed well? Do we see infection rates falling? And do we then as a country begin to talk about resuming, quote unquote, more normal life? And I think it's a more sort of mass view than a detailed standards view that's going to drive the change here, actually. I also think there'll need to be a big change in the advice around public transport. Certainly talking from a Birmingham point of view, the huge majority of people who come into the office in central Birmingham come by public transport. At the moment, the government keeps saying essential travel only. There will need to be some really significant changes in messages to get people to change their behaviour. And I actually think that's where the focus should be. And then, of course, we will need to do the marketing campaigns. The city centres are open for business, again, to get people to come back. I don't think many people are sitting looking at detailed HSE standards, if I'm really honest. Having said that, those standards are really important for a business to demonstrate they have fulfilled the COVID compliant rules. But I don't think that's going to change attitudes, if that's what's behind your question, Chris.
Thanks ever so much, Chris. And
well, I agree with you,
Andy.
Andy. So let's leave it at that.
Yeah. Oh, good. Good. I thought you were implying the other.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And we're now back to Coventry. We have Adam Tranter, who is the bicycle mayor for Coventry.
Morning, Andy, and congratulations on getting Bike Share up and launched. Looking forward to that coming to Coventry very shortly.
26th of March, I believe, for Coventry.
Exciting. My question relates to the most recent plans that we've seen for the Emergency Active Travel Fund, Tranche 2. Local authorities will obviously decide on those schemes and create those schemes. I've reviewed many of these across the region, and many do not meet the latest guidance from the Department for Transport in terms of high quality active travel design. And we know that design needs to be high quality in order for people to use it and to leave their cars at home. So while I appreciate you do not control the roads, how can you as mayor use the fact that TfWM now controls the funding that comes from government for active travel for the region to have a tighter control and raise the quality of these designs? So a bit of soft power to make sure we get the cycle lanes and the infrastructures that people will use, not just to fulfill a tick box exercise.
I think this is a very good question. And as I know Adam knows far more about this than I do, so I need to be 100% honest. It's not been the finest hour, this Emergency Active Travel Fund. I entirely understand why the government wanted to do it really swiftly. Be seen to get the money out the door, try to drive change. But I mean, I've said to DfT officials, this has not been the most effective spending of this money. Because we've ended up, just to sort of dramatise what we're getting at here. Adam is referring to schemes where, frankly, they've been installed far too quickly, haven't been done in a sustainable way, and the sort of sign of red bollards along the road without anything further being done is the sort of classic of that. So I've said to DfT that I actually think there needs to be a substantial change in what's happening here, and that means the money should probably be awarded properly to the TfWM, because you say we hold it, but Adam, that's technically true, but there's a huge expectation from every local authority that we will just give it to them straight away because they put their bids in directly to government. And frankly, some of those bids were, and I'm not blaming anyone because it was done in a terrible rush, but I would much prefer if we were going to be allocated £17 million, which is the sum we're talking about here, so a lot of money, it was held by us and we chose genuinely sustainable schemes. Frankly, even if we were doing less of them, but they were more long-term in their impact. We know the priority list that we want to move through items, and that's what we should do. So if I'm honest, I'm trying to persuade DfT that there is a different, more sustainable way of allocating this cash so it makes more difference.
And when it comes to the specific design, Andy, you know, without being too technical, specific giving way at side roads, which is not what the Department of Transport want. They want cycle lanes to be continuous, so you're not having to stop at every single junction, which is what you have outside the Gigafactory in Rowley Road potentially, which we will need to sort if it comes here.
Yes.
How do you get your team to make sure that the design is followed? Because even that's not a funding issue; that's a sort of competence issue, I think.
And let me ask you a question. On the Binley Road design, where we have done it in the way in which I described, we have the money, we take time, real detail work with Coventry City Council on it. Do you feel that that has been designed properly?
Binley Road is excellent, yeah.
Good. Well, so the answer in a sense is there's the standard. That's exactly what I want to get to. and it's taken us time. People will criticise us for taking a year from the announcement of the money to the diggers going in the ground, but it has been done in a way which will be safe for cyclists and will maximise the usage, and then respects all of those design standards. So it's evidence that Coventry City Council, I'm sure it'll be the same with other LAs, if given the time to do it, will do it to that correct design standard. And that sort of proves my point, Adam, if I'm honest.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Andy. I'm delighted to now welcome Dr. Sharon Redrobe, the CEO of Twycross Zoo. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, Andy. Hi. We see ourselves as Twycross Zoo on 100 acres as a cultural asset for the whole region. Indeed, many of our visitors come from your patch too. And we're delighted that the UK is a host to COP26. And I just want to ask how the West Midlands and particularly positioning places and organisations like Twycross Zoo can contribute to that more. And secondly, if I may, we are active in the visitor economy as an employer and as a regional asset. We drop at least 20 million a year to the visitor economy. So can I ask how you recognise the visitor economy and the growth of the West Midlands region, and how can we look for support from you to help us flourish even more? And as a subset to that question, we're still not able to access the 100 million Zoos Fund, which would certainly help with our future growth and development.
Right, the last bit of the question, I do not understand the technical points about the Zoos Fund. From cycle design to Zoos Fund, this is definitely taking me out of my comfort zone. Okay, but we'll have to look at that. Let me just answer your two general questions, though, Sharon, if I may. So first of all, on COP and sort of carbon neutrality, I hope you saw yesterday the Commonwealth Games announcement of being the first zero carbon games. Yes. Well done. Was a decision that was taken by the Strategic Board, of which obviously I sit on, back in January. Announced, I thought it was lovely, the announcement yesterday with Severn Trent and what they're doing. But that's, I mean, that is, to be honest with everyone, that is a real stretch for us to achieve that. But you want to set a sort of standard there. So that's brilliant. And you will also see, I think it's this afternoon, actually, a press release about, it all turns down to a press release, doesn't it, about what we are doing in the West Midlands as our contribution to COP. And I hope you will be pretty impressed. So to whet your appetite, we've won a sort of little beauty contest to be a host to an event pre the main conference, which I think will be really, really meaningful. We'll be talking about that, but also we're then thinking about what demonstrators of new clean growth we can actually take to Glasgow, basically. So, but you'll see about that later today. Now, on the tourism front, yeah, obviously you, other side, the Conurbation, Black Country Living Museum, everybody, all making brilliant contributions. And what we've done specifically is we set up the new Regional Tourism Board under Fiona Allen, the CEO of the Hippodrome, which is a sector-based board. This is perhaps the critical thing. It's not about politicians or officials. It's about leaders of your industry doing that work. And that was proving really successful pre-COVID. We had the best increase in visitor numbers of any region in the country. And on the back of COVID, we will then be saying, with the Regional Tourism Board, what is the strategy for regrowing that number again? So I see it as a critical part of our economy. I think it's over 135,000 people employed in that sector overall. And we will be back to use that method that we set up, of course, through our growth company to drive that sector. So clear evidence, we understand it, and we took a step to give it a structure.
Great, thank you.
And I don't know about the Zoos Fund. I'm not dodging. I genuinely don't know.
I'll send you an update on that one.
You're very welcome.
On that too. Thank you.
But good luck for your reopening. It's 12th of April, is it? You're allowed?
12th of April, yes. We're all geared up, ready to go. Everything's online. Quick ad, but thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's great, though, isn't it, for spring? So that's nice time.
Yeah, we're missing Easter, so losing another £1 million on top of the 5.5 we've lost. But, lots of people are crying. I think as soon as we're open and we can welcome people back safely, we can get back on our feet. Yeah.
I think there'll be a bounce for sectors like yours. Yeah. Good. Okay. Onward.
Thank you ever so much, Sharon. And now let me introduce you to Taisha Friday, who's head of communications at Square UK.
Hi, Andy. Nice to meet you. So as Chris said, I work at Square. And we're a payments and point of sale company that helps small businesses take payments and sell online and in person quite easily. One thing I'm interested to know, especially when we look outside of London, different regions, and in your region specifically, what is the priority for you when it comes to helping businesses in the area make sure they have the right technology and accessible technology, especially when we think about reopening at the end of this pandemic, hopefully? And the reason I'm asking is just because we work with lots of different councils across the UK to see if there's anything we can do to help with training and skills.
Fascinating. Where are you based, Aisha?
I'm based in London, so our office is in London. We have an office in Dublin, but like 75% of our customers are outside of London. In the normal world, I'd probably be up there in person.
Yeah.
We do a lot of work beyond the city.
Okay. So, my good, it's a big question, and there could be 1,001 answers. But let's take it from a technical point of view, because there's all things about funding, creative grants for scale-ups, all of those things. But let's not talk about that. Let's take the question quite literally about what we're doing around pure technology. So, of course, the most important answer is probably this region being the 5G test bed. And this was a competition that we won 2 years ago. I described it at the time as a must-win competition, and I think that's become even more evident. So about 12 months on from the first sort of rollout of 5G tech, we recently had a report that showed this region was definitely the best connected for 5G facility, better than London, Manchester by some way. And actually Birmingham and Solihull, rather than Coventry this time, were the leading elements of that. And we're now getting to the point where SMEs are actually taking that 5G capability and investing in it and sort of embedding it in their processes. So a lovely scheme that we've run through West Midlands 5G, just with an SME in Birmingham to have their own sort of 5G network within their business. It's a precision aerospace manufacturer, and it's all about the quality of their and precision of their manufacturing. It's a brilliant example. And then this week as well, we have the launch in our 3 cities, Wolverhampton, Coventry and Birmingham, of what we're calling our 5G demonstrator, to show not just in manufacturing, in all sectors, how businesses can apply that. So actually, I think that puts us really on the cutting edge. In that sense, business can be anything. I saw a lovely demonstration, this was in Coventry actually, of how a GP surgery was using this technology to actually do its consultations in care homes during the pandemic, because the quality of the imagery was so good that it didn't actually have to send its GPs into the care homes with all the difficulties that brought about. So what I've sort of learned from this is there are legions of different applications of this. I mean, the construction industry and the whole need for really accurate drawings to be sent immediately in real time, all fascinating. So there's lots of applications of this, and I think that's probably something that genuinely is unique and leading edge here, Taisha, if that's a slightly different answer to the question that you might usually get.
Thank you. No, it definitely is the different answer. I think everyone usually we find has connectivity issues. So it's good to know that actually in the region that isn't a problem, because that does affect to some extent sometimes how our products work. So that's good. And I think something I'll take away from this is, and I'll be working with Chris on this, is just kind of how can we help in that area? And
yeah. I can't say it isn't a problem, full stop. I'm sorry. That would be too optimistic. And I'm sure somebody's on the call saying, I've got never mind 5G, I haven't got 3G, they're going to say to me. And there will be examples like that. And of course, we can there work with, whether it be OpenReach, City Fibre or whatever, they're very keen to hear examples of that. But this is the whole leapfrog bit. Where are we going to go to support SMEs with technology and connectivity?
Thank you ever so much, Taisha. Thank you. And now let me introduce you to James Cousins. James is the founder and MD of Geeka Media Group. Over to you, James.
Hi, Andy. Great to speak with you. So I am a 19-year-old entrepreneur from Coventry. I founded my media business while at school. Last year, we received a non-discretionary COVID grant of £10,000, and the business scaled to 4 employees within 5 months. So really keen on kind of creating jobs in the region. I'm kind of wondering what support is potentially available to accelerate what I would call high growth businesses like mine that specialize in digital media. So we make, online media IP, we work, on marketing campaigns, all that kind of stuff, curating content. One example in the few years, we'd like to actually have a TV studio, for example, in the region for making digital content. but stuff like business rates outside of enterprise zones are quite prohibitive. So it's just what support is available for businesses like ours that want to scale. You know, we've gone from 1 to 4, we want to get from 4 to 20, really, and how the region can help facilitate that.
Well, congratulations to you on what you've done, James. Where are you broadcasting from? Where is that place in the background?
So this is the Business Innovation Centre in Binley, part of the University of Warwick Science Park. So we've kitted out a studio in an office space, which is not completely ideal, but this is as big as we can go before we start hitting business rates, and that's one problem we have.
Okay, so I know it's not the core of the question, but you know my view on business rates. It's old-fashioned. It doesn't tax businesses in terms of how they make money. It was one of my disappointments with the budget. I thought it was brilliant overall, but the fact it didn't tackle business rates was definitely a deficiency, but that's not your question. Just on studios, watch this space. There will be an announcement. Well, you already know the Mercian studio is being built in Birmingham, or will be built in Birmingham with Stephen Knight, and that will be I think what that's going to do, it's almost going to be like a magnet for your sector to really strengthen us, because we've been too weak in this sector over the last 10 years. And we saw the announcement a couple of weeks ago, but I don't know if you caught it, about what we call the Creative Content Hub, for bringing all those creative producers together in one place. And regional public money had been put into that through the Greater Birmingham Solihull LEP, actually, £3 million. So putting our money where our mouth is on that. And you will see an announcement on Friday, which will definitely excite you, about the BBC. And of course, ultimately, they can be a catalyst for development here as well. So lots going on to support the sector. 2 specifics I would call out where we are spending money for your sector. Number 1, we ran what they call the Creative Scale Up. Now, that was all about taking organisations like yours that have got established, but saying, how can they grow fast? So training over financial management, marketing, all of those things. So that was a program that we've run. We're not looking for new applicants at the moment, but we will when we get some more funding, but specifically for your sector. And the other thing that, and you'll tell me whether this is right, what I hear from people in your sector is the biggest constraint on growth is the finding of the right talent. So what we have been doing, and people sometimes say they have to go to London to find that talent. So we have to deal with that. So we've also been doing a lot of retraining of people in digital skills. And what's fantastic, our digital boot camps, as we called, 6.5 million contributed to that. Over 75% of people who went through those have secured a good job at the end of it. So that's, again, where we can put local public money to support your sector. So I hope there's a few things there that you think we're trying to do to build the sector.
Great, thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, and good luck to you, James. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic story. Brilliant.
Thank you. Ta.
Brilliant.
Thanks ever so much, James. And now Abigail Ryan, who's Development Manager for West Midlands Urban Community Homes. Over to you, Abby.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, Andy.
Hello, Abby.
West Midlands Urban Community Homes is an enabler hub to support the development of community-led housing in the region. So I have a sort of 2-part question on that topic, if I may. So the first is, would you support community groups and organisations being directly involved in the development, build and management of new homes across the region? And the second being, would you be willing to make funds available to help make that happen, and particularly the revenue funding that's needed to plan these schemes?
The first bit of your question's easy. The second bit, there's a little googly over the word revenue. So I need to be precise. I didn't know you were going to say that. That's why I was slightly bowled out, as Chris can tell. The easy part of the answer is yes, I would totally support this. And the piece of evidence for that, and I hope you know this, Abby, is we've obviously, the way we've worked in our housing and land work, everything about housing development, and as you say, we have doubled the number of homes being built across the West Midlands in 5 years, so huge progress. Is we have got this, what we call this public land task force to try to get land available for development. And we particularly have community housing sector included in that. So I hope you know we've sort of brought you in to our thinking on that. And that's the clear evidence that we do want to work with you very actively on that. So that's easy. And there's lots we've got to do. The trickiness is the last bit of your question, though. Because if you'd said, are you applicable for funding? I would have said definitely yes through our brownfield funding schemes, but that tends to be capital. Now, whether or not we can top slice to give you some revenue in that, we would need to look at that very carefully within the criteria set through what we call the single commissioning framework. But that's the trickiness. But I do understand why that is more difficult for you than, say, a big commercial developer who's got a sort of pipeline and they're using the profit on a previous deal for the revenue for the next one. And I get that's harder. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a categorical answer on that, Abby, but I would be happy to say that we should look through that with our housing and land team. But usually it's capital, not revenue.
Thank you, Andy. I'd be happy to continue that conversation.
If you want to ping a note to Alan, actually Alan's on the call, he'll pick this up because that's quite a technical point about the revenue. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Abby. And now over to Doug Squires from Squires Gear and Engineering. Over to you, Doug.
Morning, Chris. Morning, Andy. Morning, everyone.
Morning, Doug.
Unfortunately, my screen went blank just after we set up. I don't know why. I came back on again, but you were answering the question that I'd put to Chris earlier regarding the realistic chances of actually acquiring the gigafactory in Coventry. I got into the back end of your answer, but from that, do I assume that things are looking reasonably positive, Andy? Because clearly, it's something that we really need to nail if we can.
We do need to nail it, and I won't go over it all again. It's critical.
No, I do apologise for that.
No, don't worry. But you're asking a very specific question, so I can answer that. So, we've all said it's critical to the future of the automotive industry. And by the way, it will go beyond automotive in time. That battery technology will be used for home energy and everything else. So it's a critical new sector. And the answer is yes. I'm extremely optimistic. To be really, perhaps a new way of answering the question, we're going to need 4 things to make this a success. Government subsidy. That wasn't available till last autumn in the autumn statement. We've had to be banging on their door to get that agreed. Literally, the first time I saw the PM since when he got his job, that was the first thing I talked to him about. And it took a year till the money came through, but it came. The second thing you need is a site and a region or locality that's really behind it. We've now got that. The third thing you need is a customer. Now, I'm sure you all saw Jaguar Land Rover's strategic statement, and they were very careful. They did not commit to being the customer of the Coventry Gigafactory, but the association was pretty clear, and the conversations are really good. And it doesn't just have to be them, by the way. That whole cluster of automotive companies is there as well. But the bit we need now, Doug, is the international battery manufacturer. So the state we're at is going out to try to win that investor, but you have to have the other 3 before any investor would put any money on the table. And so I am extremely optimistic that we can pull this off. But by the way, contrary to what some people say, it ain't going to be done in the next few days. This is a really important, it's probably, if I was guessing, end of this year type of time for when we can get this deal sorted out.
Well, hopefully that will go ahead and put Coventry very much on the map again. I mean, we've reinvented
already
ourselves.
On the map.
Yeah, we are again. Yeah, we're always on the map. But we're constantly reinventing ourselves, and this will be an absolute major coup. And good luck with the negotiations, and let's watch his space. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Doug. And now over to Carol Donnelly, who's a consultant for CJD Consultancy. Over to you, Carol.
Hi, thanks, Chris. And
oh, we might have lost you there, Carol.
Yeah, I think it's probably me. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
My question's obviously going to be around social enterprise and developing the social economy across the West Midlands. Obviously, we committed in January last year to the 6 recommendations that really brought the Social Value Act into the fore, looking at procurement and having 5%. So how are you going to ensure that those 6 recommendations and doubling the social economy and opening the procurement opportunities for social enterprises in the West Midlands is left on the agenda?
Yep. So first thing I should say, because others won't know this, is a huge thank you to Carol. She co-chaired social economy report, so I'm extremely grateful. And she's quite right. There were 6 recommendations, but of course the critical answer to the question is that we said we would get the next detailed how was this going to be done. So dutifully, we pulled together in October, so it took us a few months, but I accept that, a number of organisations, including your good selves, to do the sort of how is this next going to happen. And I think your work is due pretty imminently. And in front of these witnesses, we're obviously going to commit to following up on that work. But the overall commitment still stands. And of course, that includes us spending 5% of our commissioning and procurement budget with social enterprises. And one thing you might not know, Carol, is that since we put our social value policy in, one of the first things I did when I came in, we've actually now totted it all up and got £2.8 million of social value commitments in contracts already awarded by the WMCA. But that, in a sense, is just the dress rehearsal. The key thing is we need the next report, which will then say, how are we going to fulfill all of these good ambitions? So putting it bluntly, I'm looking forward to being re-elected at just the sort of time where your report comes out. Then quite rightly, you'll be holding my feet to the fire saying, right now, how are we going to do this?
Thanks.
So in a sense, Carol, the ball is in your court on this, yeah. But I hope what you also would say, and I know it's not all SMEs are social enterprises and vice versa, I hope you would also say there is clear evidence that we are trying to ensure that SMEs do get a fair crack of the whip on some of the big contracts. And perhaps the single best piece of evidence of this is what we did around the HS2 contract award. I think we had about 750 SMEs on the conference call we did with the tier 1 suppliers. So that's a brilliant way of making sure the money feeds down into the local SMEs.
Thanks for that. And I look forward to delivering on the report very soon in the consortium of social enterprises that won that tender.
Thank you very much. Brilliant to get the tender. Lovely.
Thank you ever so much, Carol. Now, this is our very final question, Andy. So say the best
timing is impeccable.
Oh, we do try. So over to you, Andrew Harries, who's the Government Affairs Manager for the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. Over to you, Andrew.
Good morning, Mayor Street. Thank you very much, Chris. Just like to say, your support for the automotive sector is incredibly welcome, and I was very happy to hear of your commitment to supporting Gigafactory rollout, and I completely agree. I just hope you would include in any messaging to government that it's not an either-or message for Coventry or the North East. We need at least 8 of these factories, so we hope to see them rolled out right across the UK. And also your commitment to skills and retraining, which is very welcome too. I just wonder, moving away from that slightly, with regards to investment and securing that, whether or not there is anything more that your authority can do to support manufacturers and businesses with reform of business rates and energy costs, where, for example, business rates deter investment due to the inclusion of capital investment and equipment, and also automotive, is quite energy intensive, and with the transition to net zero, what more can be done to support with those high energy costs, which are much higher in the UK than they are in our competitor nations, for example, around the EU?
Yeah, all points are very fair. So just thank you for acknowledging our effort on skills for automotive. Probably worth just saying, because we haven't talked about this, 2 of the most exciting things that's happened, of course, the Institutes of Technology in Dudley and Solihull, which are both focusing on engineering. And there are only 12 in the whole country. We got 2 of them here, really at the cutting edge of that sector. So important for the future of our industry. Business rates. Now, I bang my head against the wall here, frankly, Andrew, because I have been to the Treasury Select Committee to make the case against this. People think immediately of retailers for business rates, but I know that actually it's really important for big manufacturers. You take huge space. It's a big part of your cost base. And it's past its sell-by date. So I will continue to bang the case for reform, but to overuse the verb bang, I'm not getting much cut through, but we will carry on. In terms of support for the sector on investment, though, probably worth just saying, I personally thought the budget was incredibly powerful for you, because your manufacturers should be in a perfect position for this super deduction piece, I would have hoped. So, and if we looked at what JLR were talking about in terms of their investment as the biggest automotive in the region, they talked about £2.5 billion a year in their 10-year plan. I mean, it was an incredible sum. Just for others on the call who are less familiar, it would easily make them the biggest industrial investor in the UK, being based here. So it's of huge significance to the country. And I hope the budget was supportive to that. It will make their investment, frankly, cost less. But the other question is around energy. Now, this is hard, very hard. but a sort of germ of hope through this. I don't know if you saw this whole work that the government have put a little money into on what they call the decarbonisation of the Black Country industrial cluster. And this is another big project that we're working on to try to make some of those brilliant tier 1, tier 2 suppliers to you much less energy intensive is the first thing to say. And then obviously the whole question of what energy is being used and what cost of it. So it's a long-term thing, but I was very pleased that that cluster of suppliers was one taken as a government as a test case. And frankly, we did well to get it, because all the others are the obvious cases around the coast. You know, we're talking about renewable energy and Teesside, well, all very exciting. But actually, how are you going to make this better for existing manufacturers is a key issue as well. So I was pleased we got that. So I think we've got a few straws in the wind there, Andrew, but I would say we're nowhere near where we need to be. It's a very fair question.
Andrew, thank you ever so much. I'm conscious of the time, Andy. A huge thank you on behalf of the Centre for the New Midlands. I'm very conscious we moved over and covered God knows how many different topics. So I'm so grateful to you. So thank you ever so much, Andy.
Well, thank you all very much for your commitments through your own businesses, organisations to our revival. As you can probably tell, I remain a determined optimist for the West Midlands. I genuinely think we can bounce back because we've got some brilliant plans, brilliant sectors, brilliant businesses. So thank you very much. Cheery bye then, everybody. Chris, thank you.
Thanks ever so much.
Bye-bye.
And just a reminder to everyone, for members of our Reimagining the Region group, we have Professor Martin Reeves, who's the CEO of Coventry City Council, who will be sharing his thoughts with us on how to reshape a city post-pandemic, which will be on the 15th of April at 9 a.m. And obviously invitations will go out shortly. So again, obviously I would like to thank Andy Street, Mayor of the West Midlands, for his time today. And may I all thank you for attending today as well. So thank you, everyone. And I look forward to
The Centre for the New Midlands is the only independent, not-for-profit think tank serving the Midlands region of the United Kingdom. Launched in 2020, our areas of interest include housing and communities, digital culture, media and sport, the Great Recovery, environment, transport and infrastructure, devolution and governance. Our initial focus is on the West Midlands. In 2021, we're launching Reimagining the Region, a regional networking group to give the West Midlands an even stronger voice. We want you to help shape the agenda for the region and work with us to create new ideas to build a stronger and more prosperous society. We will provide you with a regional network of other forward-looking organisations interested in enhancing the region in which we operate. For more information and to get involved, visit our website